All right. Welcome back to Hawk's YouTube page. We're going to start doing something a little different. I'm recording this at about 7:45 p.m. on Tuesday, August 13th. I was having a conversation with my brother last night, and it's like we have all of our subscription stuff up on the YouTube page, and I occasionally load up a TikTok video onto the YouTube page. But we haven't been creating any content exclusively for the YouTube page. And so we're going to change that because there are some times where it's like I find something that I want to talk about that is either too long for a TikTok video, but it's a subject area that's not long enough to fill up a whole podcast episode, or it's a topic that doesn't fit in with other topics that I'm going to talk about during a particular podcast episode. And so I'm going to start setting those ideas aside and recording them for the YouTube page. And these videos will be free for everybody to see. Of course, if you do find yourself watching one of these videos, please check out our YouTube page and our podcast episodes. You can find those also on our Patreon page at hawkpodcasts.com. And of course, we also have our merch store with all kinds of fun merch. All right, so he and I, we texted each other about this last night or this morning, I think, or we were talking about. I think we were talking about it while I was driving into San Francisco for work this morning. And so I was like, well, I could just do like an 8 or 10 minute thing once or twice a week, and that could be exclusively for the YouTube page. He's like, yeah, let's do that. So we don't have a name for this yet, but anyway, so that's the intro. That's what's happening here, and I hope you like it. So and the funny thing was, it's like, yeah, I can do these. That because I find stuff every day that I end up not talking about because it doesn't really fit anywhere, like time wise or topic wise. But then I got to work and I was reading a little bit of news, and I saw, what website did I see this on? I saw it in the New York Times, that the all-male Christian group Promise Keepers is making a comeback. Now, people who are my age or in their 40s or older, you might remember this group, the Promise Keepers, from the mid to late 90s. It was an evangelical Christian organization for men that, like they had like this list of promises that Christian men should keep to their families. Don't cheat on your wives, provide for your family, be whatever it is you need to be for your kids if you're an evangelical, and oppose same-sex marriage. And the organization in the 90s became freaking huge. And it culminated in, I think it was like 1997. They had an event in the Capitol on the National Mall, and they got like 750,000 or 800,000 men to come and on the National Mall, commit themselves to Jesus Christ and their families. And, but then it just kind of, the 2000s hit and the organization just faded. It just faded. But they are undergoing a relaunch now with two critical differences. When the Promise Keepers were in existence in the 90s, they were explicitly non-political. They did not affiliate with Democrats or Republicans. They welcomed people regardless of what their political belief structure was, period. Second thing, they were overtly anti-racist. I know that sounds crazy to us, 25, almost 30 years later, when we hear about evangelicals in the 90s being explicitly anti-racist. Yeah. So that's what the organization was in the late 90s. And of course, today it's making a huge comeback. And guess which two things they've done a 180 on. Yeah. So it was the organization had, faded away to almost nothing. It was taken over, and I love this. It was taken over in April 2018 by a guy named Ken Harrison, who's a former police officer with LAPD, who became an evangelist. And he sought to hold like this, grand like relaunch in 2020, but then COVID hit, and so they didn't get to do that until July of 2021, which I think they did. They did it at Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The group, and these characteristics are more so now than they used to be. The group is explicitly homophobic. The founder says that homosexuals are a group of people who don't reproduce yet want to be compared with people who do reproduce, and that homosexuality is an abomination of Almighty God. So that's the founder of the group. He was then University of Colorado football coach Bill McCartney. And I tell you what, when I hear evangelical Christian men talk that just overtly negatively about homosexuality, my immediate assumption today is that they've got a Grindr page. That may be true, maybe not true, but it seems to be true more often than not. And just a quick reminder that when Republicans held their convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, last month, they crashed Grindr because of all of the usage of that app in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was filled with straight white Republican Christian men at the time. Yeah. I was going to make a really bad joke there, but who cares? They're very down on feminism. I'm sure you're surprised to hear that. And they're very, very, as Donald Trump would say, they're very strong. They're very strong and very powerful on manhood. They're very strong and powerful on manhood. Anyway, so they're doing their relaunch. They held an event this past weekend in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which attracted about 2,000 men. And it was kind of a stepping aside of the old leadership, which was Ken Harrison. He's the outgoing chairman, which, as I said, he's a former police officer and became an evangelist. And I think the new guy fits that profile as well, if I'm not mistaken. I can't find the quote. So now, in 2024, there is absolutely no social justice, anti-racism component. The current leader says that that's what led to the downfall of the prior iteration. Yeah, is that they were concerned about racism. Here we go. The group's new leader, Shane Winnings, also a former police officer who became an ordained minister, said relative to their prior anti-racism work that it is no longer a priority. Frankly, that's what got Promise Keepers to begin its decline. By being Christians standing up against racism. Yeah. So they've chucked the racism or the anti-racism component. And this relaunch of Promise Keepers is also explicitly and 100% aligned with Donald Trump, MAGA, and the Republican Party. I know, also completely shocking. At this event in Oklahoma that they had this past weekend, it was called the Daring Faith Gathering, Daring Faith, Oklahoma, the relaunch of the Promise Keepers. And it had speakers like Charlie Kirk of Turning Points USA, and also actor Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in a movie until he discovered QAnon. Senator James Lankford, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt. Let me see if I recognize any of these other people here. Not recognizing any of the other names. But Charlie Kirk went on to say during his speech, they want American men to be weak, put into corners, afraid of your own shadow. If men and Christian men start to recommit to the truths of the promises of the Bible, this country can and will be saved. And so they've now taken, there was another pastor and activist who was associated with Turning Points USA who said during his presentation that Democrats were a bunch of punks and perverts. You know, so they had that going for them. Former leadership and current board members who are from the prior generation are upset that the group has jettisoned its anti-racism work and it has taken on an explicitly political affiliation. It's not the same Promise Keepers as it was in the 90s, said Mark DeMoss, who sat on its board and served as its spokesman during that era, adding that back then an activist like Charlie Kirk would not have been allowed to speak at a Promise Keepers event. Promise Keepers was launched to help men in their marriages and their families, not to elect the next president or the next Congress. There's no such thing as a Republican marriage or a Democrat marriage, which I thought that was interesting. I also love this passage. I fucking love this passage. Kevin Richard, 34, attended the event with his 16-year-old son. Mr. Richard works as a production operator on an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, an environment he describes as spiritually challenging, rife with vulgar and derogatory language with few fellow Christians for moral support. Mr. Richard was looking forward to a session featuring a speaker named Joshua Broome, a former porn actor who spoke on a panel about masculinity, and hearing from Mr. Kirk, whose debating skills Mr. Richard admired. So, yeah, former porn stars and Charlie Kirk. There was one panel that was called Politics in the Church. What is our role, and can we go too far? Why, yes. Yes, you can. You absolutely can go too far. And so, boy, I hope that was wind. So this organization is making a comeback. It has jettisoned its anti-racist policy pursuits and has adopted a full MAGA, full Trump, full Republican political affiliation, as, you know, so many other churches and church organizations have done today. So keep an eye out for the Promise Keepers. I'm sure that they're coming soon to a city near you, if, you know, you're into that kind of thing. Anyway, so thanks for watching the first episode of whatever the hell this is, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in.